As you can see, it's all in the genes, performance and wit. And we're going to continue on that theme with Sister Jacqui, who's going to come. Now, a number of years ago, you'll remember that a local lad found fame, I don't know fortune, but certainly, fame and fortune in a minor, little-known TV drama called Big Brother. So I'm sorry, I wasn't a fan. I thought the language was despicable. You know, the words like fiddle and stoop and plague on head and words that, you know, language that young children shouldn't hear. But Fiona was a fan and the kids watched it as well. And of course, it was phenomenal at the end of things. And Fiona wrote a song about Cameron's adventures in the Big Brother house. Jacqui's going to come and sing.
Am I allowed to say anything?
Yes, of course. Absolutely.
So Fiona was the next in line in the sisterhood, and her and I were very alike in a lot of ways, and I followed her to uni to study occupational therapy, and she was competitive, and when she heard that I was going to be able to do a degree and she only had a diploma, she decided she was going to do a degree in health studies at the same time as I was there. So she would come through in the car, and I would babysit Andrew, and she would do her degree. So we actually graduated on the same day, so it was such a coincidence. So many things we shared. One of the things being were toilet humour. And in preparing for tonight, I thought dealing with other folks' syncopation is second only to dealing with other folks' constipation. So please forgive me when I make a bloop with this, because I don't know who she fitted all the words into every line. But anyway, here we go, we'll get a try. There once was a fish trader, and Cam was his name. From Harry he came, seeking fortune and fame. He applied to Big Brother, and his life ne'er the same, ne'er was the same. Ching-a-ring-a, ching-a-ring-a, ching-ching-ching. When inside the house he made quite an impact. Hello, I'm Cameron. As a matter of fact, they'd ne'er had an accent like that, with quaint words and phrases, oh fiddle. They thought it an act, all just an act, act. One morning as Camsha, chinga-chinga, chinga-ringa, ching-ching-ching. Feel free to join in. One morning as Cam showered and started to shave, Noosh decided to bathe, but no warning she gave. Poor unsuspecting Cam had to avert his gaze, avert his gaze. Ching-a-ring-a, ching-a-ring-a, ching-ching-ching. The ladies inside seemed to taken with Cam. Steph and Noosh were his big... I think last thing that was it. Oh, sorry about the syncopation. We'll start that one again.
Yes.
The ladies inside seemed quite taken with Cam. Steph and Noosh were
big fans. They even flirt
with this man. To lap it all up seemed to be the best plan. Be the best plan. Ching-a-ring-a, ching-a-ring-a, ching-ching-ching. On clutching his Bible, he read it with fervor. Whatever the weather, to preach he didn't endeavour. On drinking he said, that's no big or clever. No big or clever. Ching-a-ring-a, ching, ching, ching. Now Cam was whisked off in the clink of an eye. To South Africa he'd fly, it's no word of a lie. The African women you couldn't say were shy. You couldn't say we're shy. Ching-a-ring-a, ching, ching, ching. Now Tickle, his housemate, could be quite a bore. Stripy dressing gown wore, tomato plants where he chore. When Cam won election, he was sick to the core. Sick to the core. Ching-a-ring-a, ching, ching, ching. We'll get there. Then entered a new girl from Swansea. She came, quite a looker, she claimed. Man was Lisa, a pain. Her poor chode jumping on her asthma, she claimed. Asthma, she claimed. Ching-a-ring-a, ching, ching, ching. Now all of the ratings they got Cameron's goat. She did not float his boat, she struck a wrong note. His threats on her windpipe got him in extra votes. Got him in extra votes. Ching-a-ring-a, ching, ching, ching. Now an unlikely alliance was formed, it was fate. Ray and Cam became mates with a reward room date. They slapped on the massacre and took quite a state. Looked quite a state. Ching-a-ring-a, ching, ching, ching. We couldn't believe it, Cameron had won. He looked fairly stunned. What on earth had he done? But one thing's for sure, he is now in the mun. Now in the mun. Ching-a-ring-a, ching, ching, ching. So what of our fish trader? Where will he go? The Robbie Shepherd show? Or star in Panto? But more to the point, where's our piano? Where's our piano? Ching-a-ring-a, ching, ching, ching.
That will appear on the greatest hits album. So, Fiona wrote stuff about every conceivable subject. Special occasions, parties, celebrations, retirements, weddings. No excuse at all. All sorts of reasons seem to tickle the poetic nerve. And we've got another letter made up from pure imagination, and Karen from West Street is going to come and read that. Karen has been my absolutely invaluable language consultant, so I'll hand you over to you.
I actually did follow Fiona and Jacqui into occupational therapy, but I don't think I can follow that, Jacqui, really. Dear Mansie, there a contest in the paper meant to write a funny rhyme. That's why I'm putting word to thee, for I hae nae spare time. I ken thou likes to air about with the chatter and the pain. It might be light some work for some, but no for rightfus men. We hear about your foreign news with tornadoes and big waves. Faith, if they'd haen war weather, they'd be hiding out in caves. Folk like to make a song and dance with a grain of sea. The rain they get down your way is just mugger food to me. A grain of sun and urines can only bide a blink. It's melting tear up the rods before we need a drink. We don't run for cover or put our sun cream on for a boiler shoot is all I need on top of me long johns. Their head were in a dose of snow and all the rods were smooring. The council had to shut the schools, but me tractor still gied storing. I gied the messages every day for the milk and bread and eggs. I never skittered on the ice, though someone's broke their legs. I doot the climate's fair for here, or making you lot feeble. I mind the days when at the Stooks the baith of us were able. The Hirst was sick a long affair, we reaper and we binder, but now I hear they canna leave the house without a minder. So take the pencil for a handy lug, it's time to make the mark. They might as well do something, seeing they never does much work. Competitions happen for youngins and old men. They might be getting a special prize for being 110. Look, I canna write a word. I'm been hard of thinking. I'm never out of the order and my boots are mostly stinking. But they were the clever bairn, the pride and joy of mother. Funny they should have a prize for being a big brother. I'll write again next Sabbath day as long as I am spared, but know that I am 98, it's best to be prepared. If thou should pass away this week, afore thou gets thee past, put word to me, and I'll hae a try afore the competition's lost. Love, Tamo.
The next one was a very special occasion. We loved Fiona's extended family, and her Aunt Chrisabel was a very special person to both of us and to many, many, many others. And so she wrote something to commemorate Chrisabel's maybe 70th birthday, not entirely sure. And Mag is going to come and read that wherever she is. There we are. Great. Come to the parlour, Chrisabel dear. And Mag and Ronald lived next to Chrisabel and Jimmock up at Cleat Farm. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to take the glasses off for this bit. One of my memories of Fiona, she was very kind, and of course, as Les said, she would never miss a party. So we were abroad in Rhodes, and there were 5 of us and 3 of them. And so she laid on a meal for us. The tablecloth was a sheet, but we enjoyed the meal, and it was my birthday. So she had duff that she'd made. I wondered how on earth she managed to make duff without the facilities of home. Anyway, after we'd eaten the duff, she said, oh, she'd no problem making the duff. She made them in Andrew's underpants. And it was Chrisabel's 80th birthday. Come to the parlour, Chrisabel dear. The kye are all waiting and milking time's near. We're teeing them all in with a dog for the land. Their udders are ready, the milk is at hand. Come to the beach with us, Chrisabel dear. The high tide is by, the next een is near. Grotty buckies hide in the shingle and sand. We'd find a dose more if thou'd gie us a hand. Come for a walk with us, Chrisabel dear, with cheekets and boots and we're wet weather gear. Mind on the trek, Paul, that thou haes for a whack. It speeds us all up and makes thee look swack. Come back up to Shetland now, Chrisabel dear. The cliff tops are stable, the coast is quite clear. The helicopter pilot has gotten the sick, so now is the chance to finish in whack. Come to the prayer meeting, Chrisabel dear. The chairs in the town hall are out, never fear. For 9 congregations the folk will be there to help Orkney flow in a river of prayer. Come to the kirk with us, Chrisabel dear, and tell us about the first time thou were here, with story old cobwebs in a badminton hall. Tell us the story, we want to hear all. Come up the side with us, Chrisabel dear, and open the door for the PDCEers. The heating goes on to warm up their meeting. The warm weekly welcome they get tax some beating. Come through the back with us, Chrisabel dear. On a Monday the crafters will slowly appear, with their knitting and shoeing and crochet and all. I hear now they're 80, they'll mak thee a shawl. Come to the party now, Chrisabel dear. I'm sure they're invited. if no heads guy queer. We all of the friends will raise up a cheer and say, Happy birthday, Chrisabel dear.
Is that not beautiful? Isn't it? And beautifully read. Thank you so much, Mag. So when we were in Spain, Fiona and I lived in Spain for 7 years, 2 years in Madrid and then 5 years in the north, in Ribadeo. And I had started a bit of scribbling of my own at that time. And so somebody thought it might be of interest to me when there was a flyer going around inviting entries to a short story competition to be published in a collection in English that was published every year called The Good Life in Galicia. Well, it didn't kind of catch my attention in particular, but Fiona picked it up, wrote the short story, won the competition, got a certificate presented by the mayor, I think €15 prize money, and a night in a country cottage, which was great. So this is the short story. We're getting towards half time. Don't worry. And so we'll read a bit of this and then finish it after the break. So this is, I think, a lovely short story. I've read it to Rosie already when I was down there for a visit. You liked it?
Yeah, it's lovely.
And it is such a good description of our life in Ribadeo. It's a fiction, but it describes so well the way of life that we had and the things that characterized our daily routine. So here we are. It's called In the Market. Each day in Lugo province, Galicia, there was a market somewhere. Mondays in Trabada, Tuesdays in Vilalba, Wednesdays in Ribadeo, Thursdays in Moimenta, Fridays in Burela, Saturdays you could nip over the Ria to Vegadeo, and on Sundays return to Meira or Barreiros. The towns filled with vans, tractors, lorries, and even hand carts as farmers' wives brought their fruit and vegetables, including huge bunches of grelos eaten nowhere else, and their lovely free-range eggs. The cheeses were easily followed by their smell, and the meats followed by the flies. A whole pig's face, vacuum-packed in a flattened form and hung up on a stall to grimace down at those who passed by. Vegetarian pilgrims on the Camino de Santiago averted their eyes as they trudged through the market, carrying backpacks adorned with the shell of St. James. In the same markets, there were stalls for every other possible purchase, every size of underwear or socks. 3 pairs for €2, guapa! Every tool or ornament and shoes, from stilettos to the wooden suecos, the clogs still worn by Galician farmers. Sandra loved the market. She often travelled further afield on her day off just to see a new market, although the Moroccan clothes stalls seemed to be the same in every major market. Sometimes all the marketeers were in Viveiro in the first week of the month for a mega market. She loved it. Her students in the academy where she taught were so curious to know what she bought when she was home in the UK, which markets she went to there. But the truth was she hardly ever shopped in markets at home. Apart from Camden Town and Portobello Market, the only ones she knew were the Farmers Market the week before Christmas and the German Beer Fest with its wooden cabins. Like all her friends, she did her weekly shopping in Tesco. That was why she so enjoyed Galicia and the fantastic foodstuffs she gathered every market day. The best part of her new job teaching English in Galicia was that she only began work in the afternoons, so mornings were for shopping, mostly in the nearest market. One of our students, Guillermo, was a quiet but studious type. He smiled as he listened to her teach and always ventured to reply to the questions she posed to the group. He struggled with the phrasal verbs. Over 4,000 appeared on the web page she recommended, but then so did every student of English. His favourite part of the class was the idiom of the day. He wrote them all down with glee, every archaic word he seemed to like. When she first began teaching at the academy, she was glad to have adult students. There were no rules to prevent her socializing after class. Week by week, she got to know students over tapas in one of the local bars. For the students, it was like a free class, so they usually paid for the drinks. For her, it was a chance to hear more about Galicia, the culture in their different pueblos. Guillermo wasn't able to stay very late. He had a daughter, she knew, and he had to return home before bedtime. There was no mention of a mother, but she didn't like to pry. One afternoon, the lesson centred on there is and there are. A bit tricky when the Spanish only had one phrase replacing them both, I. Could be used to say how much there was of anything, singular, plural, or uncountable things like salt, milk, or sea. She found herself asking how many people there were in each student's house. There are 2 in my house, responded Guillermo. Interesting, she thought, knowing his daughter lived with him. Weeks passed. She settled into Galicia. She began to see it as her home. In the processions of Carnival, she was greeted by students who waved to her from their charanga bands as they passed, blowing on their kazoos. She was greeted by parents and grandparents of her students. Although they spoke no English, they wanted to thank her for helping their family members. Everyone needed English for work, to get a job, or a better job. She felt she was helping. She knew she had gained more respect here in Galicia than she had at home in the UK. But some days she felt a bit isolated, almost lonely. She noticed in the market that everyone else was shopping in pairs. Sisters, friends, mothers with daughters discussing the lomo or the chorizo, choosing together. She wondered if she would ever find a friend in the market. Putting her thoughts towards that afternoon's B2 class, she tried to use phrases with locations. I'm all at sea. I'm at a crossroads. I'm over the moon. I'm in the market for... The list went on. Not all had Spanish equivalents, so she explained them one by one. Each classmate had to write down an example based on their life or experience. Rosa was first and keen to share. I am over the moon because I have tickets to visit Scotland this year. One of the other students muttered something that sounded like, Ryanair don't fly that high. Sandra ignored the remark and praised the effort. Another student, Pepe, was at a crossroads in his life, trying to look after his elderly father and keep his job. At that point, the class reverted to Gallego, while advice was given on chicas whom he could employ to help with his father, or residencias where his father could be taken to live. Sandra realized she'd lost the moment and gave up. Although she could follow basic Spanish, once the local Galician language erupted, there was no going back. Sandra noticed Guillermo speaking to Pepe after the class broke up. She realized Guillermo had not answered any of the questions. As he left the class, she called out that they should bring their answers next week as homework. The following Tuesday, she received their homework to mark. She saved Guillermo's until last. He had answered well and honestly. Not that that was necessary. Fiction was acceptable. The only phrase she queried was when he had written, I am not in the market yet. She didn't mark it as incorrect, but put 2 question marks next to it. It didn't really make sense. Then they were back to routine English in preparation for the exams due in a month. A very pretty face greeted her as she stepped out into the Saturday market that weekend. Good morning, señorita. How are you? After realizing she was being greeted in English rather than Spanish, she smiled at the teenager and replied in English, wondering how far to go before the speaker would get that confused look. She needn't have worried. The girl had a very good level, a slightly American accent, but a huge vocabulary. She'd obviously been told Sandra was a teacher, and like many of the youngsters, was hoping for extra classes, preferably free. I have come to introduce you to my grandparents, she announced. They have the best vegetables in the market, and today they also have honey. Sandra saw no harm in following her. It was broad daylight and nothing was going to happen. She turned to her young companion and asked her name. I am Rocio, came the reply, followed by a joke. Like the dew, I am best in the mornings. Sandra marvelled at her easy nature, chatting away in English and passing remarks on all the stalls they passed. Sandra felt so relaxed to have a friend alongside to discuss the produce, she found herself asking what some of the cheeses were called, and the girl not only knew the name, but also offered helpful comparison. More or less like brie, but stronger. A bit like feta, but drier, explained her companion. Before they reached the grandparents' cart, Sandra thought about asking her what she wanted, how she'd picked her up outside her flat, how she knew she was an English teacher, but it seemed so direct and un-British, so she decided to wait. In the next aisle, she was rewarded. Abuela, te presento la señorita Sandra Stevenson, profesora de mi papá. The wrinkled dame beamed a huge smile and began thanking her for the help she gave to her son. Unsure which son she was referring to, Sandra kissed both the wizened cheeks proffered and studied a face that bore no resemblance to any of her students. All will be revealed, she thought, and the next moment saw the grandfather approaching, the very face of Guillermo, only slightly more weathered, but just as gorgeous. In 40 years' time, if Guillermo looked like that, she would still fancy him, she thought. The old man had a winning smile, and his eyes, as blue as Hemingway's Old Man of the Sea, twinkled at her. He didn't want to be presented. He grabbed her hand and then offered the traditional dos besos, or probably the dos bicos, as they're known in Galicia, 2 kisses. Encantado conocerte, Sandra, he announced, letting on that he'd already heard her name. So Guillermo might be the quiet type, but he obviously spoke to his father and mother about his teacher. She felt suddenly included in this wee family. They were obviously the grandparents on the paternal side. She knew nothing about the other grandparents or Rothio's mother. The grandparents were already busy selling their new season's honey, so Rothio gestured that they should continue their circuit of the market. Rothio explained that her granny didn't want any help with the job of selling. She had high hopes for Rothio and wanted her to keep up her English. Where did you learn such good English? Sandra asked, relieved at last to know who this girl was. Mostly from school, I suppose, but my mother used English in her work and then sent me to spend several summers with people she knew in the UK through her work. My accent, I'm sorry to say, comes from The Little Mermaid and other Disney films. Papa suggested I come shopping with you to learn a bit more your accent. He really likes it. Sandra wondered again how to ask about the shadowy mother figure, but was unable to phrase a question without asking what her mother used to work at, or where she went to, or where she was now. Still, she felt her heart lift at the idea that Guillermo liked her accent and had obviously spoken well of her to her daughter and his parents. She decided to return the following week and buy some honey, hoping that his parents would recognize her. She suggested to Rothio that they have something in the cafe across the plaza and sit down a minute so she could assimilate all the new information. Rothio was more than happy to be invited, and they found a table where they could sit under the sunshade but leave their ankles in full view of the sun to brown them up for summer. When the waiter took their order, he inquired if Sandra was Rothio's aunt. The teenager replied, "Of course not. She was an English friend." And again, Rothio felt touched that this girl she had just met was already claiming her as a friend. Sandra resisted asking Rothio what her father was doing that weekend, but she did ask if he was worried about his exams. Rothio said he was studying hard as he wanted to do well. She added that she helped him a lot and insisted they speak English at home after his classes. That might explain why his homework was often more accurate than work he wrote in class. How funny to have role reversal where the kids check the homework of the parents. Rothio told her he had been promised promotion if he achieved the level B2 in his next exam. That would be a huge help to him, not only as he would earn more, said Rothio, but also he would not have to pay the academy fees for his English classes. Well, that came as a shock to Sandra. She had assumed all her students would continue studying with her next year. She had hoped most of them would return for their C1 exams, even if they passed the B2 next month. The fees she knew were expensive, even though she handled no money. Laura in the office took care of all that, but several of the younger adults were being paid for by their families in the hope of work, either here in Galicia or more likely in Sheffield or some other British location. She wondered if she should run optional extra classes using different British accents. However, today the thought that Guillermo might do well and leave the academy filled her with mixed emotions. She would love to see him pass, as he worked so hard, but teaching his class without him would feel like someone had switched off the lights. She must get a grip, she decided. Well, does Sandra get a grip? Does Guillermo pass his exams? What happens next? You'll have to wait till after the cup of tea and buns. Thank you very much.